Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode, and today we are going to be having one question for every single NBA team before the playoffs. Now, this is going to be kind of like a mix of like questions I have for them going into the playoffs, offseason questions, specific player questions for a certain player on their team, and just one question kind of wrapping up this regular season going into the playoffs for every single team this season. Now, it's going to be kind of a little bit, we're going to go through the Eastern Conference and go through the Western Conference, but all these questions are kind of specific to their team and what I think the question is exiting the regular season, going into the playoffs for their team just based on the regular season. Throughout the playoffs, for the playoff team specifically, we'll kind of get into those and break down individual videos on them, depending on if they get eliminated, early exits, making a Cinderella kind of run in the playoffs. We'll break all that down because the playoffs does start in a week. The plan starts next Wednesday, I believe, on the 15th, and then we're going to be going right into playoff predictions next week. I have that video out as soon as everything is concrete in both conferences for the playoffs. But starting out with the Eastern Conference, Cleveland Cavaliers, right? Really, really good year for the Cavs. The main question I have is, what if this isn't the year? I feel like this year everything has broke right for the Cavs for once. Kenny Atkinson has been generational for this team. He's completely a 180 from this team. This team last year, they were talking about trading two of the big four. Now, looking at this, what if this isn't the year? In my opinion, the only team that can beat this Cavs team in the 7-game series in the Eastern Conference this year is the Boston Celtics. Especially with the Damian Lillard injury to the Milwaukee Bucks, I still probably would have favored the Cavs in that series if they were fully healthy anyways. But the only thing standing between this Cavs team and the finals, in my opinion, is one, staying healthy, and two, the Boston Celtics. I still probably lean the Celtics. In a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals, I still probably lean the Celtics. More proven, been there before. The Cavs are still a really, really young team. I still would lean the Celtics. But in terms of the question, what if this isn't the year, right? You trade for DeAndre Hunter to put icing on top of the cake. You're not going to be able to keep Ty Jerome. Now, with the way he's been playing this year and the free agency, he's going to get a bag in the open market. Just another year of teams being able to figure you out with a new coach in Kenny Atkinson. You kind of took the Eastern Conference and the league a little bit by surprise. Nobody expected the Cavs to be this good and this elite this year. So that's my question. What if this isn't the year? What's the next move? Because I think replicating this level of success year in, year out, while the Cavs are a young team, yes, but at some point, the role players that they have that are playing out of their minds this year are going to start to trickle off. And I think that's where good teams, unless they're able to replenish those role players, I think it could get a little iffy depending on what the Cavs do in the future. But what if this isn't the year? I think this is the best shot the Cavs have really ever had in the Eastern Conference with this core for sure to make the NBA Finals. Going on to the Boston Celtics, should they fear anybody? Probably not. I kind of have one smaller question, which is more long-term down the line based because they do have new ownership. And I'm interested to see how long they can keep this core together because I think the bill is like $300 million out of pocket for this new ownership. So I'm interested to see how long and how this new ownership reacts to the Celtics and this core that they do have. But the main question I have is, should they fear anybody? I don't think so. I think this Celtics team, until I see them lose in a 7-game series, I don't think there's a team in the NBA that can really stop them in a 7-game series and beat them 4 times. I don't think it's Cleveland. I don't think it's OKC. They just have the complete package, especially this is a team that went to the finals with majority of those games without Kristaps Porzingis last year. You add him, and you saw the difference in Bade in that Dallas series in the finals. So if they're fully healthy, I'm picking them to beat anybody in a 7-game series. I still just think it's the Boston Celtics over everybody else. They have a complete team, everything around them. They're more of a deep team than people probably thought going into the year. And with Peyton Pritchard stepping up, Sam Hauser's always going to be a sniper off that bench. And then you just have good continuity this year. Everybody knows what their role is. Nobody's trying to do anything extra out of their role. I think Mazzulla has really settled in. I know he won a championship and he's been there for a second now, but I feel like he's really settled in knowing after coming off the championship, okay, I've solidified myself. I'm more comfortable here now. Not saying that he wasn't already comfortable, but you know what I mean. Like, he's really settled into the head coach of the Boston Celtics now, even coming off of a championship. But as long as this core is still together, I still think the Boston Celtics are going to be the best team in the NBA. Going on to the New York Knicks, do they need another year before they reach that elite level? I do think so for a number of different reasons. They have to improve that bench. That bench unit has to take a step. They need to go out and get some more NBA ready proven guys on good contracts that can come in. It's going to be easier said than done to fill out that bench unit. And Tibbs, I feel like, is in an interesting spot. I'm going to say a take about Tom Thibodeau, who I think is a really, really good coach in this league. Very proven coach. He is like Doc Rivers in a sense, to where, remember when Doc Rivers had those Clippers teams that didn't really have the top end, high end talent to really make a deep playoff push, but you could always fear them just a little bit. They were always had enough to give you a little bit of a scare or a little bit of a push. I'm talking about the teams on the Clippers where you had Tobias Harris, Lou Will, Patrick Beverly, Montrezl Harrell before they got the Kawhi and PG link up together when Doc Rivers was the coach over there. I think Tom Thibodeau is kind of in that same light. When he is a coach, and both him and Doc Rivers, when you give them a team that is maybe doesn't have the top end talent to really make a ton of noise, and they don't really have the top end stars, that's when they give you their best. That's when they have their best work. Kind of like how even before they got Karl-Anthony Towns, when they had just had Julius Randle, even before Brunson, they were still exceeding expectations. Like when they got Jalen Brunson takes off and he becomes a star. But I still feel like those teams they were the underdog, if you will. And I feel like those two, in Doc Rivers and Tom Thibodeau, I see kind of the similarities in that. Because I question Tom Thibodeau's coaching style of playing his guys so much. We've even seen a report if Mikal Bridges, the biggest Iron Man in the NBA, is saying that we're playing too much, there's something there, right? There's definitely something there. And I think Tom Thibodeau, it might be a little bit of a hot take. I think he could be on the hot seat depending on how this season ends. He's going to probably be the coach going into next year as well. But I think with this core, they're going to be together for a couple of seasons. I think they're more scary next year. They're going to get an offseason to really get this continuity on this team together and also improve this bench. But I do wonder what the situation is with Tom Thibodeau. But in terms of this year, I think they need one more offseason, one more good offseason, one more year with this unit to become an elite level team in this league. Indiana Pacers, can this team spark another playoff run? I do believe so. When I'm looking at the standings right now, they are currently the 4 seed, and it's looking like they're going to be pretty locked into the 4 seed. They're 3 games back of the Knicks for the 3 seed, and if I'm the Pacers, I'd rather play the Bucks with no Damian Lillard than the Detroit Pistons at this point. I know the Bucks have Giannis, but you matched up well with them last year. You beat them in the first round last year as well, even though they weren't healthy. Again, they're not going to be healthy this year. So looking at that, I think this Pacers team has the depth, the shooting, the scoring, the pace to really spark another deep playoff run. I'm not going to be shocked if I see the Pacers fighting to get to the conference finals again. I think this team is really underrated. And a lot of the talk on last year's season was, they played a hurt Knicks team towards the end of that series and a hurt Bucks team. But you got to play the cards you're dealt. And again, this year, if everything stands and the Bucks are the 5 seed, I would take the Pacers to win that series for sure. And I think this Pacers team could possibly spark another playoff run. They have the makeup and identity to do so. Going on to Milwaukee Bucks, what does another first round exit look like? Giannis, when you hear Giannis speak about the Bucks, it's all about winning. It's all about what we need to do to get back to the championship, what we need to do to start winning again, what we need to do to build more of a winning culture. That's all you hear when it comes to Giannis about the Bucks. It's nothing else. It's all about winning. Another first round exit. Even though Damian Lillard is hurt and is out indefinitely, I think it still raises those same question marks about Giannis possibly being traded in the offseason. I think Dame being hurt possibly bought you another year at best with this core and Doc Rivers. But I just have a feeling like if they get bounced in, let's say, 6 to the Pacers, just outmatched, don't have enough scoring to keep up without Damian Lillard, I think there's those same questions that we've kind of been seeing for the past couple of years about Giannis possibly being traded are going to come up again this offseason. Going into the Detroit Pistons, are the Pistons just happy to be here, right? A complete 180 from a season ago. JB Bickerstaff, I feel like, even though Kenny Atkinson's going to win 60 games with the Cavs, JB Bickerstaff brought a historically bad Detroit Pistons team, not just to the play-in, to the playoffs. A top 6 seed locked in with a full week of the season still remaining. I think the Pistons, yes, I do think they are going to slow down a little bit in the playoffs. They got the Knicks in the first round. I do have my concerns with the Knicks, but I feel like if the Knicks are fully healthy with that at least starting five, I lean the Knicks in that series for sure. I just feel like the Pistons are a really, really good regular season team, and I think they need one more scoring option next to Cade Cunningham. And with Jaden Ivey out, I think that the scoring output is really going to come to bite them in the playoffs, but I think they can win a couple games. Are the Pistons happy to be here? No, I think they earned this spot, and they're not just happy to be here. They're expecting to go into this playoff series and win, obviously, but I think this is a great step in the right direction. If you're a Pistons fan, there is honestly, other than the championships in the 2000s, has there ever been a better time to be a Pistons fan? Probably not. Cade Cunningham is that dude. He's an elite level player. I think he's got to be a top 10 player in this league one day. Now you just have to put the pieces around him. I love the defensive potential that Thompson and Ron Holland have. You brought in a veteran like Malik Beasley, who you pretty much have to retain now with the way he's been shooting the ball. And like Duran's come along, you have Isaiah Stewart. I think they just need to go get that one score. I wish they would have been interested in the market to get like maybe Zach LaVine, somebody of that nature, maybe a Brandon Ingram, even though we really haven't seen Brandon Ingram play. I think that's more so because the Raptors are tanking. But I think they're just one scoring option away. I think they're in a good spot going forward, but I think they're just one score away, especially with Jaden Ivey being out. I think they're just one piece away. They're one piece away from like being like where the Pacers are, for example. I think they're one piece away from being where the Pacers are, how the Pacers got Pascal Siakam. That put them in a better position in the playoffs and kind of just being more competitive just in general. Having another scoring option next to Halliburton. Getting Cade that co-star in this offseason, I think he's going to be very, very huge, but they have to get the right one to pair with him in Detroit. Going on to the Orlando Magic, what is going to be the move to improve this offense in the offseason? Now, they are in the plan. They're currently the 7th seed. Yes, they can make a push into the playoffs, but they're going to get matched up against the Cavs or the Celtics. I don't really like them in either of those situations for sure. I think they would get bounced just because that offense, man, they can do a lot defensively. They have a very versatile roster, but they need a go-getter. Right? They need somebody at that guard spot specifically, and without Jalen Suggs, it's already been hard enough. We've seen some strides from Anthony Black for sure, and Mo Wagner, because he came out early on in the season. I was thinking about him for Sixth Man of the Year. At the first 2 months of the year, he was really hooping. So the injuries, KCP has kind of been a disappointment. At least just shooting the three ball, you're still going to get that defensive level from KCP. But it's just that shooting. They need more shooting. They need more spacing. They need more offense. Because if they were able to add some spacing, it's just going to make everything easier on Franz and Paolo Banchero to get downhill and get to the lane and be able to create. But even with all the lack of spacing, this Orlando Magic team is still like a serious threat, I feel like, in the Eastern Conference. They just need to add some more offense in this offseason. I wonder what that move is going to be. If it's going to be maybe a big-time move to go bring in some shooting. Maybe there's a possibility of like somebody like a LaMelo, Trae Young, somebody of that nature that can come in and give this team a spark and a jolt offensively to get to this team to the next level. Now, the Atlanta Hawks. Did Jalen Johnson's injury kill the season? Now, with what the Atlanta Hawks have been able to do, it's the perfect example of less can be more. Getting rid of DeJounte Murray, bringing in Dyson Daniels, who is now, in my opinion, should be the defensive player of the year. He's been and the most improved. I think if you're really looking at it from that scope, what the most improved player and the defensive player awards mean, I think he should win both. Maybe that's a hot take. I think Dyson Daniels is the most improved player and the defensive player of the year. He was a player that could not get into the rotation with the Pelicans. He goes to the Atlanta Hawks, becomes one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, leading the league in steals, and he is a perfect addition in that backcourt next to Trae Young. I don't know the addition of what a better definition of most improved and defensive player of the year going to one. I think he should be the catalyst for both awards at this point. Now, with the Jalen Johnson injury, I think it did kind of kill the season for this team, because if you had Jalen Johnson playing at the level he was playing at alongside of Trae Young, alongside of Dyson Daniels, Ricochet has been very, very good. I feel like the Jalen Johnson injury, if it doesn't happen, you might see them keep a DeAndre Hunter who was hooping for him. You might see them keep a Bogdanovich who was hooping for him. But that trade kind of allowed them to kind of be like, all right, we're going to push our cards in, fold them. We're going to look to this offseason, see what we can do to get back into the playoffs on a consistent basis. But I think if they had Jalen Johnson, with how kind of up and down the Eastern Conference has been, I could have saw them being in a situation where like they could be like a Pacers team, to where like they have a guy in Trae Young that can close games. They have good supporting pieces. They can guard more so than they have in the past years, with somebody like Dyson Daniels being your point of attack defender. So if I was the Hawks and they still had Jalen Johnson, I think that injury did kill the season. But Jalen Johnson, if he was healthy, I think the Hawks would have been a very interesting team going into this playoffs. Going to the Chicago Bulls, will the Bulls find any direction? Now, the Bulls in this back half of the year have been one of the most fun and exciting teams to watch in all of basketball. Josh Giddey has really turned a corner. They're going to have to pay him. That trade for Alex Caruso that even me looked down upon the time of the trade, they came out on top at the end of the day. Josh Giddey has been playing like an all-star caliber player. This back half of the year, Kobe White has been doing the same and has been doing so all season. Montas Buzelis has been really good towards this back half. Even Vucevic has had his moments. I still think they're going to be able to move him in this offseason. But it's the direction point of view. The Bulls are always going to end up in the play-in. They're never going to be bad enough to get below the play-in, and they're never going to be good enough to make the playoffs in the top 6 seed or make any noise in the playoffs out of the play-in. So they need to find a direction this offseason. I don't know what that direction really is. Maybe they get lucky, get out of the play-in, and then they win the lottery. Like, I think it's going to be super, super interesting to see what the Bulls do, because I feel like this is like the most fun I've seen Bulls fans have with this team in some time now. And I think they need to find a direction and build off this momentum that has really sparked this Bulls team to end the year. Going on to the Miami Heat, is it time to go off star hunting? Again, like, what stars are available? Who knows? Everything kind of just comes and goes. It's either a fake report about a star being available, or it's something like you're just scrolling on your phone and, oh my God, Luka Doncic just gets traded in the middle of the night. So it's like the Heat, I like Andrew Wiggins. I think Andrew Wiggins, his role is going to expand. And now giving the Miami Heat a full offseason to kind of really build out this roster post Jimmy Butler, I think they're going to look a lot better next year. But they need to go get that guy. They need to go get and be in the market for somebody else that can take some scoring pressure off Tyler Hero. Bam Adebayo, his offense has been up and down all year. But I think this team still has the makeup and still has the foundation to be a market for a star player to want to go and play there. Now, what that star player is, I have no idea. But I think if the Miami Heat, if I had any question for them, it might be time to go star hunting again. Is it time to go star hunting in Miami again? Going to the Toronto Raptors, main question I have, what's going on with this roster? You bring in a guy like Brandon Ingram. What are you doing with Scotty Barnes? Him and Brandon Ingram pretty much play the same position. Are you going to go point Scotty Barnes? You saw Alvin Mangum quickly, who you paid a bunch of money to. RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram kind of have the similar styles in their game. You saw Jakob. Your bench is full of like younger rookie-ish kind of players. Like Grady Dick has been really solid this year as well when he has played. Like, I just have no idea what they're doing with this roster in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion. I think it's a little bit all over the place. But in terms of what's going on with this roster, they have talent, but it's just like, it's all like second tier co-star talents, right? It's all, they don't have a guy. Is Scotty Barnes going to be that guy? Is he going to break out into like being like a Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brunson kind of esque level? How they've broken out in the past couple of years. Like, I don't know. This roster is just weird. I don't know what the Toronto Raptors are doing. Like, they could be shopping RJ Barrett this offseason because they have too many of the similar styles going on that team. I don't know. The Toronto Raptors roster is confusing. That's the only really question I have. Let me know in the comments if there are any answers to these questions about this roster. Going on to the Nets, were they a little too good this year? 25-53, probably the worst going into the year. Them in Washington were probably the least talented rosters in the league. And they ended up being a little too good because they have 25 wins. The Sixers are below them. The Hornets are below them. The Wizards are below them. And in a year where you have somebody of the talent of a Cooper Flagg, what a terrible time to not just bottom completely out. So it's going to be interesting. They've been a little bit better than people expected them to be. And they probably won some games that they probably shouldn't have. That made the front office a little bit upset. But I think the main question, were they a little too good this year in a draft class where you probably would have just rather bottom it out than have probably like the 8th, 7th, 6th pick around that range, depending on how the lottery shakes out for you. So I think they were a little too good this year. 76ers. Now what is next for this team? Joel Embiid was shut down. Tyrese Maxey was shut down. Paul George was shut down. I don't want to go as far to say, is the window completely shut? It's like I'm giving them maximum one more year for the 76ers. That is absolutely it. They are begging and pleading with the lottery gods to give them this pick this year in this draft. Who knows how it shakes out for the 76ers? The Atlanta Hawks got very lucky and fortunate last year to win the lottery. Who knows? The same fortune could come to the 76ers, but I'm giving the team one more year. That is it. One more year. That's it. That's all I'm giving them. Hopefully they can be healthy for one playoff run, and we see what happens with the core of Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid. We'll see what happens, but in my opinion, if I'm the 76ers, whatever pick I get, unless it's number 1 for Cooper Flag, I'm pairing that pick up with Paul George, and we're going and getting somebody that's more available, like a Lauri Markkanen. I think the Utah Jazz would do that. If the 76ers got more lucky than the Jazz and the 76ers got the 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft, I would package that pick and Paul George get off that money. I know Lauri Markkanen's making a lot of money, but he can fit your system and what you're doing a lot better. And he's just going to be more available, and he's younger than Paul George, right? So that's kind of just something I've been thinking about. If there's any way they want to wash their hands with the Paul George situation quickly, it's going to be pairing this pick up, unless it's number 1, to get him off the roster. Going on to the Charlotte Hornets, is it time to wash your hands with LaMelo Ball? Interesting question, for sure. I think it might be, because they're in an interesting spot. He can't stay healthy. He's never really available. Same with with this roster and this organization has just been a debacle. Looking at what Charlotte should do, I think they should at least open the market for LaMelo to see what they can get. Maybe you can build something around Brandon Miller going forward. But this team just doesn't really have a whole lot working for them outside of Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, and LaMelo Ball just cannot stay on the court. So looking at that, they might be in a position to wash their hands with this LaMelo Ball situation and move on and go into the future. The Washington Wizards. Can the Wizards capture the flag? I think Cooper Flag is something to pair with Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Bob Carrington, AJ Johnson now. That moves me. Flag to the Wizards would move me, and would it help really improve that young core, because I like Sarr, I like all the young guys they have, but I don't really know how I feel about them being the guy. And I'm still up and down about Cooper Flag being the guy, great player, but the guy on the NBA level. We'll see what happens. We'll see if the Wizards can capture the flag. Going on to the Western Conference. Now, this was going down to the last game of the season for the Western Conference in terms of playoff seeding. I mean, 3 through 8 is up for grabs. 3 through 8 is up for grabs, and we're going to see some insane matchups be made in this last week of the season. But into the Western Conference. Oklahoma City Thunder. Is this team being disrespected? I see both sides to this. They've had some teams that have had their number in the Western Conference, for sure. And all the teams that they could play in that first round possibly are teams that they have had some problems with. And my thing with OKC is their offense is too predictable. Their offense is too SGA, ISO ball dependent. And that's what killed them in the playoffs last year. Their roster isn't built well enough offensively. They have a lot of 3-and-D guys around SGA. And this is a 64-win team we're talking about. This isn't like there's some frisky playoff play-in kind of team. This is one of the best teams in all of basketball. So something is working here. I'm not saying everything they're doing is wrong. But I think they're just a little too SGA dependent. They don't have anybody else offensively that is looking to get downhill and get by you to go get a bucket of their own. They are drive, kick, find SGA late in the shot clock. SGA is going to go get it done, right? I think Jalen Williams is super, super up and down with his aggressiveness, has all the talent in the world and skill to be an all around just star player in this league. And he is. But he's not even close to the aggressiveness of what this OKC team needs. They need him to go get it. There's times where he's acting like he's not the second best player on this team. He's the second best player on this team, acting like he's just some guy that comes off the bench and plays 15 minutes a night. That's how I feel about Jalen Williams. Yet he can do everything you want. It's just the aggressiveness and the mindset, I feel like, isn't to that level yet that OKC needs it to be at to go compete and beat teams in the Western Conference at this current state. That's why I feel like nobody's really scared of OKC. I just really believe that. That's a big reason. I feel like they are so SGA dependent offensively to where they're just like, and if you watch the Lakers game this past weekend, they were like, okay, we're just going to load up on SGA, try to not foul and get him to the line, and we're going to see what the other guys can do on OKC. Nobody on this OKC team offensively is trying to get downhill other than SGA. You might get the spark out of Jalen Williams here and there, but it's never consistent. And I think he's the key to unlocking this OKC team in the playoffs specifically. But this is a 64-win team we're talking about. This is one of the best teams in all the basketball. They probably have, you would think, the MVP in SGA, depending on who you're talking to. But I just think, are they being disrespected? Maybe a little bit, but I see both sides to this. I see why they are, and I see arguments for that are valid. I see arguments for why those why they're being disrespected. I think those are valid points that somebody could bring up, like them being too SGA dependent, like I just brought up as well, them still being a younger team. Like, I just don't. I feel like if you got matched up with OKC Thunder, I feel like any team in the Western Conference, mind you, they don't care who they match up with. They got there. All these teams have star players. They don't care who they match up with. Every team thinks that they can beat every team in the Western Conference. That's how talented it is. So I just think if the OKC Thunder, are they being disrespected? Maybe a little bit, but I see both sides. Houston Rockets. Are people overlooking the Rockets? Kind of like OKC. I see both sides. I see a world where people are overlooking them because of what they can do defensively, and if they get hot offensively from three, that's a problem. But I think when you're looking at the West, I can pretty confidently say whoever they play outside of Memphis might be the only team that, like, if the Memphis came out of the play-in in the top 8, to where I would pick the Rockets over Memphis. Any other matchup the Rockets get into in the playoffs, I could argue they don't have the two best players in that series. They wouldn't have the two best players in the Lakers series. They wouldn't. Jamal Murray, you can debate depending on what kind of Jamal Murray you get. If you get playoff Jamal Murray, then they don't have the two best players against the Nuggets. They don't have the two best players against the Clippers or the Warriors. They wouldn't have the best player against the Timberwolves, depending on how you feel about Julius Randle. Anthony Edwards would be the best player in that series. And OKC would have the best player in the series against the Rockets team. So I think it's interesting. I think this Rockets team is very frisky. If they get hot at the right time and get the right specific matchup, like I think they would beat Memphis in a series. I think they would beat Sacramento in a series. Dallas, I think they would beat. But I think Timberwolves would get them. I think I give Timberwolves the edge. I give the Warriors the edge. I give the Clippers the edge. Same with Denver and the Lakers. So it's going to be interesting to see how far this Houston Rockets team can go. But I'm not shocked if they make a little bit of a push. I'm on both sides. I see both sides of the coin with this one. But I think they're just one guy away still. I really do. And this is crazy seeing that they're a 52-win team in a gauntlet of a Western Conference, and they're the 2 seed, and they pretty much have the 2 seed locked up. With probably like one more win, they're going to be cruising the rest of the year for this last week. But are people overlooking the Rockets? I see both sides. LA Lakers, can the defense and lack of size hold them in a playoff run? It's interesting because, like, the Lakers are so weird of a team. Like, they'll go out and have the defensive performance they did against the OKC Thunder team, but then play the Warriors also last week and look just lost defensively at times. They're an interesting one because they are, on paper, they have potential to be a really good defensive team. It's kind of been up and down as of late the last couple of weeks in the last real month of the season since they've gotten Luka Doncic. But they're in a position right now where they would play the Warriors, Timberwolves, Grizzlies, or the Clippers in the first round, or even Denver, depending on how it all shakes out at the 3 seed. I think they're good enough to win the playoff series. That second round matchup would be very, very interesting of who they would match up with, because I think they would struggle in a 7-game series with a Warriors team, because the Warriors are a great defensive team and they have a clear identity offensively as well. The Clippers would be a really, really good matchup. They don't really have anybody for a Zubac inside, and depending on what kind of Kawhi Leonard you get, it could be interesting there. And the Clippers are just way better on ball defensively than they have been in the past couple of years. Timberwolves would be a really good matchup. But I think the Lakers' path to the finals this year, and I think there is one, I think it's really going to come down to matchups. They're going to have to get really good matchups if they want to make a really good deep playoff push, and it can happen. I think there's a world they have Luka and LeBron, and Austin Reeves has been great. So I think there's a world where it happens, but got to see what kind of matchups they get. If they can get lucky and pull the Rockets in the second round, then I can see a world where they go to the conference finals. But if they pull, like, say they have to go through the Minnesota, I think that's a tough series because of the size of Minnesota and the defensive ability of Minnesota. And then say they got to go play like Denver, I think that's tough because Denver's owned them in the past couple of years, and they don't have anybody for Jokic. So the Lakers' path is really on matchups. Can the defense and lack of size hold? Going back to the question, I think it can. We'll see what happens, though. Denver Nuggets, is the bench going to be this team's downfall? The bench for Denver is bad, man. When Jokic goes out of the game, and I know he's the MVP, best player in the world, but when he goes out of the game, and they haven't had Jamal Murray for the past couple of weeks dealing with an injury, man, this team is a rough watch when he is not in the game. And they don't have any creation. They don't have any creation, really. Depending on what Westbrook you get that night, it's either going to be 15, 8, and 9, good shooting splits, getting downhill, getting everybody involved, or it's going to be like a 7, 5, and 8 game, bad shooting splits, bunch of turnovers. So it's just like the Westbrook being up and down doesn't help when the non-Jokic minutes, Murray being up and down as well throughout the regular season. I know playoff Jamal Murray is a real thing, but looking at this now, they've lost their last 4. They're really in the mix of possibly even finishing in the play-in. So I think it's going to be super, super interesting. And the bench, I do think, is going to be a problem. The bench is going to be a problem for this team. Having no real creation off your bench is interesting. I guess another question I could have is, are you worried about Jamal Murray and the injury concerns that have been looming this year? Like, I feel like the past 2 years in the regular season for sure, he's been dealing with injury and knick-knack injury after one after another. So I think this team and this bench is going to be its downfall in the playoffs. LA Clippers, are we finally going to see a healthy Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs? The Clippers, there's so many good coaches in this league. Ty Lue has had to get it out the mud with this Clippers team. Injury this, injury that. Every time he gets to the playoffs, all the star players on the team gets hurt out of nowhere. Like the Clippers, if they get Kawhi Leonard healthy, which he has been towards this back half of the year, if they get a healthy Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, they are going to be a problem. The point of attack defense that Derrick Jones Jr. provides them is something they haven't really had in past years, to where, like, you don't need Kawhi to guard the other team's best player, or need, like, a Paul George, for example. They have 2 point-of-attack defenders in Chris Dunn, Derrick Jones Jr., that can take on those assignments. James Harden's still playing at an all-pro level. Kawhi Leonard's been playing, once he has gotten in rhythm, at an all-pro level still. Zubac has been the like hub of this team in the pick and roll with James Harden. Norman Powell, who could have been an all-star this year. This Clippers team, and led by a great coach in Ty Lue, you add Bogdanovich, you bring in Ben Simmons, however you want to feel about Ben Simmons in that situation. I feel like he, in certain lineups, can be very valuable. So this Clippers team, if they get a healthy Kawhi Leonard, nobody wants to play this Clippers team in a 7-game series. I promise you that. If I had to rank them out of teams I wouldn't want to play in a 7-game series, I'd probably, out of like this middle-packed bunch, I'd probably rather play Denver. Yeah, they have Jokic, but who else do they, like, Defensively, they're not the same Nuggets team they were in past years. Rather than this Clippers team, who's a really, really good defensive team. Like, would you rather play the Warriors? I think the pack is like, rank them. Clippers, Warriors, Timberwolves. Who would you rather play in the first round, right? All of them are tough matchups. I want to say a take when I go over my playoff predictions. One of the Clippers, Warriors, or Timberwolves will be in the conference finals. One of these teams will get to the conference finals. In my opinion, I think these three teams have all the makeup and the roster structure to make a deep playoff push. And I think the Clippers are a very, very dangerous team. Now, I feel like I've been saying this about the Clippers for years. We're going to get to the playoffs, and we're going to get to Game 5 in the first round, and we're going to see Kawhi Leonard's out indefinitely. And it's going to be James Harden, Norman Powell, which I think they'll fare better off because they started the season off that way and still showed success without Kawhi Leonard. But I think that's still a ceiling without him. You know what I mean? So, like, it's going to be interesting. I think the Clippers are a very dangerous team. They get healthy Kawhi Leonard on one more playoff run. Anything can happen in this Western Conference. Going on to the Golden State Warriors. Is playoff Jimmy still a real thing? Now, they have been phenomenal. I think they're like 19-3 or like 20-3 since getting Jimmy Butler, and when him and Steph Curry have played together, this team was dead in the water, a 10th seed, not even over 500. They get Jimmy Butler, now they're really fighting for the 3 seed. It's crazy what Steph Curry can do with a co-star, right? But Jimmy Butler, if playoff Jimmy Butler, if they can get that same Jimmy Butler that took those teams, the Miami Heat teams, to the finals, this is going to be a very interesting Warriors team, right? I love what they've seen from Brandon Podziemski as of late. He's been phenomenal. I'm not saying he's going to be hitting 7-8 threes a game in the playoff clip, but him playing with confidence is huge for just more creation outside of Steph Curry. Draymond Green's probably going to be winning Defensive Player of the Year this year. Jonathan Kuminga off that bench. If they get him to play the way he's been playing since coming off the injury, that's huge. Moses Moody has just been the perfect 3-and-D complement next to a Jimmy Butler, next to a Draymond Green. Quentin Poza provides them some spacing off that bench. Gary Payton II is a great point of attack defender, and you still got Steph Curry. So pairing Curry and Jimmy with how Curry's been playing and the life that this team has and the belief that this team has, kind of like the Clippers, man. Kind of like the Clippers. I'm like the Warriors and Clippers, man. I'm telling y'all, the Warriors and Clippers are going to make a playoff push. One of these teams are going to make a run. I don't know which of team I'm going to take yet, but out of the Warriors, Timberwolves, and the Clippers, one of these teams is getting to the conference finals. That's my take. Going on to the Minnesota Timberwolves, they've had an interesting year. Are they the most dangerous team in the West? Kind of pivoting back to my take on them, the Clippers and the Warriors possibly making the conference finals. I think they're dangerous because the size that they have can match up with anybody, but they have somebody in Anthony Edwards that can just get it. They can just go get it. I love with this potential, like the defensive lineups that they can have out there with like a DiVincenzo, Anthony Edwards, McDaniels. Randall has really been really good as of late. We'll see what Rudy Gobert you get in the playoffs. But we've seen that they can match up really well with Denver. They have the size to really overwhelm a Lakers team, in my opinion, and the defense to stick with them. I think they would win a tough series against Houston, and I think they match up well with an OKC team that can really, really guard. Minnesota can really guard. We saw that last year in the playoffs, hanging their hat on the defensive end. So looking at that, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves, matchup-wise, I think are the most dangerous team in the Western Conference. With how they can match up with every team. They have size, scoring. Their offense can be a little wish-washy at times, but I think the defensive ability they have with Anthony Edwards and the scoring that he can provide you, I think they match up really well with a lot of teams in the Western Conference. I'm going to say they're the most dangerous team in the West. Going on to the Memphis Grizzlies, is Ja Morant still the future of the franchise? I feel like ever since the 2022 season, where they ended up losing to Golden State in the second round, I feel like everything's fallen downhill since you fired Taylor Jenkins, who's, in my opinion, one of the best developmental coaches in the league with what he's been able to do with some of the young guys over there in Memphis. I feel like Ja Morant's just getting in his own way at times with some of the antics and everything else. I'm not saying that that's not him, or that's him not to be an emotional player, him not to do this or that. Be yourself. Be yourself. Know the moment. Know what's going on around you. Right? And this is a team where I'm like, they could be getting frustrated with this as well. Like, they could be going into this offseason, especially if the Grizzlies, like, losing the play-in. Looking at this, like, is it time to wash our hands with the John Morant situation? We've seen Jaren Jackson Jr. grow as an offensive player. We've seen what Desmond Bane can give us. We've seen how we can develop talent on our roster, even without Taylor Jenkins. So it's like, is John Morant still the future of the franchise? I want to say yes, because I think John Morant is the type of player to where he's not going to come around very often. I think he's still the future of the franchise, but I wouldn't be shocked if I see reports this offseason, like we kind of did last offseason, about them possibly looking to move off John Morant and wash their hands with this situation, because there has been a lot of off-the-court stuff that has, and injuries that have impacted this team for sure. Going on to the Sacramento Kings, will there be big moves this offseason? There was a report that came out a couple weeks ago about DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis possibly having serious talks with the Sacramento Kings this offseason. This team is like stuck in purgatory. They don't have that 1A guy to take them over the top. They have a bunch of 2s, but it's just like it's the Western Conference. If this Sacramento Kings team was realistically in the Eastern Conference, I think they would maybe not easily. They would be like a top 5 to 6 team out there. But in the Western Conference, they're the 9th seed, and they're like 8 games back of the Grizzlies, who ain't been really that good this year either. Who are just in the same, especially as of late. The Grizzlies have been terrible as of late. A month ago, they were the 3 seed. Now they're fighting for their playoff lives. So that's how crazy the Western Conference is. But the Kings haven't really been in the mix of even like the 3 through 8 max playing spots. Like, they moved off De'Aaron Fox. Like, Malik Monk goes to the point guard spot. You bring in Zach LaVine, which is like, cool, okay. But this offseason is going to be very telling for what the Sacramento Kings' future is going to look like going forward. Going on to the Dallas Mavericks. What is the best case scenario for the future of the Dallas Mavericks, right? Kyrie goes down with the ACL. The Luka Doncic situation, cool. Like, it's come and gone now. Anthony Davis, he still has his injury concerns as well. Has looked great when he has played, being more of the 4, having 2 bigs in Lively and Gafford. So looking at this, the best case scenario is you bring back Kyrie Irving. You possibly add another scoring options to this team alongside Kyrie and Anthony Davis. You get Kyrie Irving back probably around December, January-ish. Probably won't be fully ramped up till like March, April-ish for the playoffs. Best case scenario for this team is you get a fully healthy year to see if that Luka trade paid off for you and this next year or two. That, I think, is the best case scenario. But they have to sign Kyrie Irving back this offseason. So the craziest thing could happen to where they went from the finals with Luka and Kyrie and great supporting players to just 2 years removed having an aging Anthony Davis who's injury prone, no Kyrie Irving, no Luka Doncic. How does that happen? And no real draft capital. How does it happen? How does it happen? I don't know. You tell me. How does it happen? That's the case. That's a scenario that could legit happen. Kyrie's like, you know what? Coming off the ACL, they traded my man Luka. He was the one guy I was locked into playing with long term. Maybe another team gives me a bag somewhere else. Better situation for me, right? That could happen. And now you're stuck with no draft capital, Anthony Davis. You still would have a good supporting cast around Anthony Davis, but in the Western Conference, I mean, you got to have a team. Like, you got to have a different level of team to get out of this Western Conference. Like, I'm sorry. Anthony Davis has your best player with no real number 2 is not getting you anywhere in the West. It's not. I don't give a fuck how good the defense is or the dynamic is with the bigs of Gafford, Lively, and AD. It's not getting you deep in the Western Conference. That's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario is like you get Kyrie Irving back on a long-term deal. You get him back around January, February-ish, and hopefully you can get this team healthy enough to see if the Luka Doncic trade paid off. That's the best case scenario for the Mavericks going forward. Phoenix Suns, how good of a package can Kevin Durant get you at this point? They're in an interesting spot to where, like, the Bradley Beal no trade clause is, like, pigeonholing this team, like, so bad. Like, the Bradley Beal no trade clause is, like, huge. Because I promise you, he would not have made it past the deadline if he didn't have that clause, right? So it's like, what are they going to do this offseason? They're kind of forced to move off Kevin Durant. That's just going to happen. That's from Shams and all those reports. They're going to move KD, right? How good of a package can that get you to have a team that can get back into the playoff hunt with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal? Unless they can find a suitor for Bradley Beal. Maybe Bradley Beal also just wants to get out of Phoenix, maybe wash his hands of this whole situation and go to a different situation to where he has just a better role. But this Phoenix Suns team has 3 stars that all want to operate in the same. They all want to operate in the mid-range. None of them are really high volume level 3-point shooters like that. That's not really their game. They can shoot the 3-ball, obviously, but that's not really their game. They want to get downhill, get into the mid-range, score like that. So I think all those styles clashing with the coaching inconsistencies and like firing this coach, hiring this coach, I just feel like the Suns really, ever since they lost to Dallas in that Game 7 at home, this Suns team they haven't looked the same. They have not looked the same, and it's all going to come down to how good of a package can Kevin Durant get you to not enter a full rebuild, because I promise you Devin Booker probably ain't staying around for a full rebuild. He already went through that phase. I guarantee you he's not staying around for another one. He probably loves Phoenix. He's not staying around for another 2 to 3 year rebuild. So the Kevin Durant package, how good can it be to kind of at least keep you afloat, right? See if you can just get the less is more theory that we've seen teams do in this past 2 off seasons. Maybe the Suns can do that. Best case scenario for them. Portland. Is it time to start trimming down the young core? They just have a lot going on in that roster. Kind of like Toronto. They just have like a logjam at a bunch of different positions. Like, what are you doing with DeAndre Ayton this offseason? Same with Jeremy Grant. Shaedon Sharpe, I like, has a lot of potential. Danny Avdija is a fleece from the Wizards for Malcolm Brogdon. Like, he's been phenomenal back half of the year. Scoot Henderson still has his moments, his ups and downs. Like, Tamari Kamara, who's been a diamond in the rough for them. But what's the young core? What are you building toward? Especially you're adding another young player in this year's draft. So they just have a lot going on in their roster. I think they need to start trimming, cleaning up the roster a little bit. I still think they should roll with Chauncey Billups for another year because this back half of the season, they almost had a play and push. I think it's very interesting, but I think Portland needs to kind of just do some cleaning up this offseason. Who do we like as our young core? Who should we possibly get rid of going forward? The Spurs, how good of a duo will Wemby and Fox be next year? I think this comes down to like what's around them. I know what I'm going to get out of Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. Like, I think them as a duo is going to be top end of the league. But it's just like what's around them. I love Stephon Castle next to De'Aaron Fox, but they need more shooting. They need more spacing. I mean, the only real shooter you have on your team that provides you real consistent spacing is like Devin Vassell. He's somebody that I can see being a candidate to go get another guy that can be a difference maker, real true difference maker. I know they've been kind of linked to Kevin Durant. That would be crazy for them to do, but it's interesting because I think they need more spacing. I think they need more front court depth for sure. That's a big need for them this offseason for sure. I feel like you need to experiment more with like, what if Wemby had like a spacing big next to him? Maybe not up to the caliber of like an all-star level player, but just experimenting, bringing in some guys to see what the fit's looking like with Wemby and Fox. But it's all going to be what they put around him. I do like the depth this team could have for sure, though. But they have a really good amount of tradable contracts on this team and a ton of draft capital to go make some big-time moves to pair with Wemby and Fox this offseason. So I think duo-wise, top end of the league. But I think this Spurs team definitely needs more front court depth and more spacing. Going on to the Pelicans, is it time to shop Zion and reset? I think that question does come up this offseason for sure. But I think you got to keep Zion. I think you got to keep him. Even in those healthy stints that you've seen from him, I think keeping him is better than what you're probably going to get in return for him. Because every team you call with a Zion trade, they're going to be like, well, he has this and he has that with injury and conditioning. Like, I think it's better off just keeping him and just trying to ride it out, seeing what you can get, because you have a good roster around him. Like, it's not like the Pelicans don't have a good roster around him. So hopefully you get DeJounte Murray back healthy next year, coming off the Achilles, which is tough and brutal. I feel like you can move off CJ McCollum. I think that could just open the door to having more Trey Murphy shine. You're going to have Herb Jones, one of the best defenders in basketball. You have Yves Missi, who's been quietly one of the better rookies this year. Seeing if you can add even just a little bit more front court depth to kind of pair with a younger center and Yves Missi next to a Zion Williamson. So, like, I love Jose Alvarado off your bench, but, like, they have a lot going on with this roster, and they have a lot of talent, but it all comes down to Zion being healthy. But I think with the right moves, you can keep Zion and still be interesting, because this Pelicans team, like, in a normal year without, like, the crazy injuries this team went through, they're probably more so in the play-in-esque range. But with the injuries to Brandon Ingram, DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, like, this whole roster was hurt. This entire roster was just in the gutter for the most part at the start of the year. And that kind of killed them. And then we've seen once Zion's healthy and dominant and on the court, he's still one of the best. He's probably the most dominant player outside of Giannis and LeBron in transition, just going downhill. It's either a foul or a bucket. A foul or a bucket every time Zion goes to the rim, but it's all about his health and putting the right amount of pieces next to him. So I think you got to keep him. Utah Jazz, the last team, the last question. Who is even a part of the young core? Because, like, Utah, they've been stockpiling assets and draft capital. They paid Lauri Markkanen, which I feel like that is a trade that, like, or a contract signing where I'm like, I could see them getting off of that in the future. Walker Kessler's been on the market for, like, ever, it feels like. And he's a really good big. I don't know why and he's younger, so why would they want to move him? They have, like, a logjam of, like, Sexton, Collier, Keyshawn George, Jordan Clarkson still. Like, I really like Collier. I think that was a really good steal for them in the draft, back half of the draft. But, like, what's this young core? Like, I don't really know what the young core is. They're another team that's, like, hoping to get in the Cooper Flag realm and capture the flag there, because that would be super interesting with him, Lauri, and Walker Kessler. But they need to kind of figure out, they're kind of like Portland, where they have a lot going on the roster. They might have a lot of depth in terms of youth, but the quality of the youth is, like, they don't really have that wow guy. Like, I could even say they don't really have, like, a Shane Sharp, like, man, that's a prospect, that's a player, that's something we can build on. They don't really even have that. They have good players, Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, but they don't have that, like, wow, that's that young piece for the future. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, who is even a part of this young core for Utah, and what is it going to be like going forward? But that is all I have for this episode. One question for every single NBA team going into the postseason. We'll probably do another version of this based on, like, what happens in the playoffs and what moves teams make throughout the offseason. But thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope you see you tune in to future episodes.